This program does not represent the views of this station and may be considered offensive to some listeners. This program may contain mature subject matter, including frank discussions of controversial topics. It is intended for mature, open-minded audiences. Discretion is highly advised. This program is entirely independently produced by and is copyrighted by Frank. It is broadcast here under license.
Hi there, this is Irma. Tune in from Monday to Thursday, noon to 2, for the Brad and Irma Show, where we talk to people who think out of the box. natradio.com.
We're back, and
yeah.
Here we are. Speaking of Wazoo, though, you have a guy here who's written a book about becoming a seducer.
Let's just tell people that we've got our next guest here in the studio. We've got Frank B Kermit here. Frank, it's good to have you back, because I know we've had you here in the studio before.
It's good to be back, Hugh. Thanks.
And, I know the last time you were here, you were telling us that you were just about to release a book on the internet, but I see you got a couple of hard copies here.
That's right. Well, the last time I was here, I was working on a book entitled Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, A Man's Guide to Satisfying the Emotional Needs of Women. And that was going to be about a 700-page ebook. Since then, I've been writing a lot, and I found a way how to, rather than have an electronic book, have hard copy books, paperbacks, and add to that a number of the chapters from that original book have eventually grown and become books of their own.
And that we were just talking to you a few months ago.
That's right.
And now...
So at present time, I have 2 published books, both available on my website, franktalks.com. And I'm currently working on the third book, which I'm hoping to get out by the end of the year. And the third book is entitled, I'm a Man, That's My Job, The Philosophy of a Seducer.
Well, I tell you, when we did have you the last time, I was riveted every moment of our conversation that we had, because it seemed to me that, you've got the other book here, From Loser to Seducer.
From Loser to Seducer is actually my autobiography. It covers everything from the time that I was stood up at my prom when I was in my teens, to losing my ex-fiancé to one of my best friends in my early 20s, and eventually having no sex for 5 years, and after that entire journey, turning that around and having 5 girlfriends at the same time, going on a poly date where I'm dating 2 girlfriends on the same date, really just changing my entire life around. This was originally just going to be a 30-page chapter in the larger book, and it just, ballooned into 200 pages of an autobiography.
Well, I'll tell you, I guess one of the reasons I found our discussion so riveting was, as a guy, I think probably almost all guys, if not all guys, have dealt with this kind of issue. The issue of rejection with women, the issue of, trying to get a girlfriend or just be with trying to get some love into their life,
or just stay in a relationship, period.
Yeah, so I think it's a universal theme that guys for sure are interested in that somebody that has done the work has actually explored what it takes to, as you say in the title of the one book, to go from loser to seducer.
And I can tell you, it's not a very pleasant journey. It's not an easy journey. A lot of pain, having to change your identity, having to finally adopt new beliefs that were counter to the original beliefs you had. And that's where a lot of the pain comes from, because as a loser, you have certain beliefs of the way relationships are supposed to go, the way women are supposed to behave, the way men are supposed to behave. And when you find out that all those things that you've believed in almost all your life don't work for you, and you need to go through change, there's an incredible amount of pain associated with that kind of a journey.
But as men from the last generation, most of what we've been taught does not work.
That's right. And when I started this, what I wanted was one unifying theory, that as long as I follow this one rule, I won't make as many mistakes as I used to. And I came up with that rule, and that rule is this. A woman can only play one of 2 roles in any man's life. She's either your mother or she's your lover. She can't be both. What's happened with our generation of men is that we were brought up never to make mom angry, and somehow that transferred to never make your lover angry. So we have certain expectations of our lovers to sort of act like our mothers. This does not generate attraction. Women want to mother their own children. They don't want to mother the man in their life. That causes a lot of resentment.
You know, if anything, a woman wants to be treated like the princess.
More than that. It's not about pleasing her. It's not about making her happy. I've come down to 10 emotional needs of women. And if you address these 10 emotional needs, she will continuously be attracted to you, and she'll want to actually build a life with you. So, for example, let's look at emotional need number 2. Women need a range of emotions. One of the biggest mistakes our generation of men is making out there is that we're constantly with the mindset of having to make her happy. Well, if you solve all of a woman's problems and you constantly make her happy, she'll get bored. That's not any fun. That's one of the reasons why women love bad boys, because there's an emotional range. It's not about being happy all the time or miserable all the time. But every now and then, you got to give her a variety of emotions. Sometimes you need to make her a little angry because she feels that anger. She feels all these different emotions. Sometimes she wants to feel a little irritated. If you've ever been in a situation where you had everything going really well, and one day she just decides to start arguing with you about something which really doesn't seem important to you as a man, it might be because she needs that emotional range. She needs some sort of emotional upheaval. This is when women get to feel alive, when they have the variety of emotions. As men, we're different.
Are you calling us drama queens, like that we need melodrama in our lives in order to get off? Is that basically it, or is that...
No, because a drama queen is a woman...
I'm all for it.
Hold on.
I wonder if it's actually... I wonder if it's...
Call me out.
But isn't it kind of like the men's need to have intimacy, that we have our needs and women have their needs, and maybe women are actually
Wait, you
acknowledging...
guys want intimacy?
Well, we do, and we want sex too. But those are could be two separate things, and so a woman needs to have her emotions stimulated. Men do too. Men don't necessarily identify it, but there are men who will go out and pick a fight because they need some conflict in their life to resolve the inner turmoil. And I would think that women probably have to exercise that too.
I'd like to address the first question Hugh had asked. Is it about just thinking of all women as drama queens? No. There are some women who need an excessive amount of an emotional range. More than other women, these are who I would call the drama queens. The average woman doesn't need that type of emotional stimulation, but the average woman does need some variety of emotions.
Right. And it's not just getting emotional to say, pick up your clothes off the floor. That's not what we're looking for.
No.
That kind of... That's not.
It would be stimulating discussion or non-damaging argument.
Non-logical discussion. Talk to her about what she feels about certain things. Don't ask her what she thinks about certain things. They want to talk about the way they feel about certain things. This is where humor comes in. When a woman says she likes a guy with a sense of humor, it's not. She doesn't want to be with a stand-up comedian. She definitely doesn't want to be with a clown. How do I know? I did stand-up comedy for a while, and I can tell you that stand-up comedians and clowns are among the loneliest people in the world. They don't want a guy who's going to make them laugh.
That's the Seinfeld episode, right?
That's right.
Sorry, Jerry, I saw your act.
Yeah. It's the fact that they want an emotional range, and humor is one of the greatest ways where if she's feeling really down, humor can make her feel really good in a span of, 5-10 minutes with a couple of really good jokes. The same way that sometimes nasty humor can take her from feeling really, really good to maybe feeling not so good or feeling even a little angry or a little tense. That's the value of humor.
If the humor is actually at her expense, then, is what you're saying, if I was making light of the situation by trying to make a joke of it.
You need to be careful when you make a joke at a woman's expense, because if you're picking on her, it violates one of her other emotional needs, which is fear of abandonment. Emotional need number 5 is the fear of abandonment. So when you start picking on your woman directly, she might start to feel that this is just you trying to set up an indication that maybe you want to break up with her down the road, maybe you're not happy about an element of the relationship. There's a difference between teasing her, where you're teasing her about something which is really not important and you're both having fun with it, and making fun of her and poking fun at her, which is really just a violation of that emotional need, fear of abandonment.
These sound like good values for friendship too.
They are. I haven't really applied them all to friendship. Emotional need number 1, I believe, is universal. Emotional need number 1 is the protection of a person's reputation. Everybody wants their reputation protected and put into the best possible light. That's universal for men, women, friendships, business relationships, and so on. I find that in my relationships with women, that is actually a very key one.
Well, the one relationship we have with an intimate partner is the one we want that ability to be open without criticism, to be who we are without worrying about that being exploited.
That's right. And in my experience, this applies to all forms of relationships. If we're talking here about sexual relationships with women, whether it's a girl you meet and you have a one-night stand, a weekend fling, even in those cases where someone is having an affair. The protection of reputation is one of the biggest criteria points that a man should hit when he's talking to a woman initially. If he can demonstrate that he is the type of man that will protect a woman's reputation, that goes so far into generating attraction and making her see him as a potential candidate for being the one.
You mean being a gentleman to a certain extent? What do you mean by protecting her?
Okay, well, if you were to ask me, let's say I had met you in a club or I'd meet you on the street and we're talking, and you start asking me about my past relationships, the way that I respond to that question will indicate to you whether or not I protect a woman's reputation. Depending on the question you ask, it could be something as simple as saying, well, I'm a man and I don't talk about those things in public. Or I might even relate a story to you, as I do in my book, From Loser to Seducer, where I actually talk about various experiences I've had, and I don't mention names and I don't mention any specifics about the women I've been involved with in order to do exactly that, protect their reputation.
I guess an element of that is also not playing the name, the shame, and blame game.
Exactly. One of the emotional needs, emotional need number 8, can you handle her sexuality? This means that if she's a virgin, or if she perhaps is a sex worker and works in the sex industry, can you handle that? And are you able to make her feel comfortable in expressing that, or are you the type of person who will make all kinds of jokes about that sort of industry, making her feel uncomfortable to share that with you? One of the best stories I can tell to illustrate this was of a married couple that I was aware of. She was bisexual, but she never admitted it to her husband. Her best friend was bisexual as well, and the husband knew about it. And all he ever did was talk negatively about the best friend, making nasty comments about her being bisexual and bisexual this, and very, very disparaging remarks. Then one day, he gets the bright idea that he goes up to his wife and says, I'd really like to live out a fantasy. I'd like to have a threesome. Do you think you could talk to your friend about joining us? They were divorced within a year, because he just went ahead and he violated those emotional needs. He spends all of his time criticizing another woman for her sexuality, and the end result is what? You really think that she's going to live out a fantasy with him when he's already demonstrated that he can't handle that kind of sexuality? After they got divorced, believe it or not, the two women actually ended up together. They're in a relationship right now. He could have had the ultimate man's fantasy to have two women be with him on a regular basis, and because he demonstrated that he couldn't handle that sexuality when he didn't even know he was being tested for it, well, he's a lonely man right now.
You mentioned reinventing yourself in the beginning. That's basically you had to go from, I guess, being a loser to, what is it?
Seducer.
From loser to seducer. And I just want you to comment on, basically, I find there's an identity crisis going on between men and women these days where we don't know, women aren't quite sure what feminism is anymore and what it is to be feminist. Men with metrosexuals, and suddenly if they're wearing cologne and they're sensitive, they're metrosexual. But then there's I'm always saying, where's the real men? Where are the big, burly, real, tough, but, not banal or stupid. But is there such a thing? I've got so many questions here, I guess. Okay, talk to me about the identity.
All right, let's start off with identity. You brought up militant feminism.
Mm-hmm.
Militant feminism was brought in for one reason, and that was to make sure that men and women have equal rights under the law. This was the good thing. This was the value of feminism. But it went too far. It went to tell people that men and women are equal, and we're not. We think differently. We have different body parts. We process information differently. So that's the first thing. Men and women are not equal, but we all deserve equal rights under the law. When feminism came in, that was the first and primary goal, and it succeeded. Where it went too far is that men and women now believe that we're supposed to be equal. If you're a woman, you should be able to act like a man. If you're a man, you should be able to start acting like a woman. And you should be, and both genders are adopting things that are important to the other gender. What happens? Evolution steps in. And evolution says, well, this is a great intellectual construct. but it affects the way people are attracted. There's a reason why men and women are attracted to each other. Opposites attract. And when the woman starts behaving more masculine and men start behaving more feminine, it disrupts the flow of attraction. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing. When you say, are there any real men out there? Yes. What I teach men in my seminars is the idea of address your emotional needs, which is being a man, which is being dominant in the right situations, which is taking responsibility for the relationship, but without being violent. This is why sometimes a woman will be madly in love with a man who maybe is violent with her, the typical woman who's in love with the jerk. Because indirectly, a jerk will address a woman's 10 emotional needs. However, he's beating her up. But she can't find that same attraction for a nice guy. Why can't she be attracted to nice guys? Because that's an intellectual construct. And we're not talking about intellect here. We're talking about the way people feel. We're talking about attraction. So are there real men in the world? Yes, I've studied under a number of them to try and figure this out over the last 10 years or so. So what I can tell you now is that men do have an identity crisis. They have adopted beliefs that were never meant for them. They have adopted female beliefs that were not designed for them. And one of the problems that we had talked about a little bit earlier, a lot of the men now are addicted to the drama associated with relationships. That was never for us. Women are allowed to be addicted to the drama because they need the emotional range. Do men need some form of emotions in a relationship? Absolutely, but not at the same depth as women. And when a guy adopts that same type of addiction for drama, he becomes the type of man that long-term the woman will not be attracted to. Even though intellectually he might be the best man for her, the attraction just isn't there.
So it sounds like what Irma's is expressing is that there's not... She's lamenting that there aren't a lot of, quote, real men out there.
Go on.
Just to finish the idea, and Frank, what you're saying is that the men are out there, and they're lonely too.
That's right.
And they're failing in their relationships or in their ability to get a relationship. It sounds to me like what you're talking about is giving information to men that they need. If they are able to learn the lessons that you're teaching, then Irma is not going to have her problem of finding the real man, because they will. What you're talking about is giving information to men that they need. If they are able to learn the lessons that you're teaching, then Irma is not going to have her problem of finding the real man, because they will be ready to deal with women like Irma.
Well, Irma's got a real woman, so that's all that matters. See? I have options. So until there's a real man, there'll be a real woman.
You've got a real woman?
Well, I like to think of them as concubines, but I'm finding that women are turning to women more these days. 20-year-old girls, 30, 40, at all age, we're turning to each other. And we still have our boyfriends, but we're finding that option is there, and it's actually becoming far more acceptable.
Absolutely. I agree with everything you have just said. Bisexuality for women is becoming more and more commonplace. Women have a lot more freedom to express themselves sexually, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, a lot of the guys are really unsure how to handle this, because they're still brought up to think of their lover as their mother, and no man wants to think about his mother as being a sexual being. So women are incredibly frustrated with this. So when a woman meets a guy, and you know that this guy can handle your sexuality, that's the first and major
well, the bigger thing also with women, I find women that I've talked to, all different ages and so on, is that we have a voracious sexual appetite that men are just not meeting.
Agreed.
And that's another reason why we're turning to each other, because a man just cannot. And then are we supposed to actually think that only one person can satisfy us forever? Is that really like a feasible argument?
I think that if the person in question is willing to make the effort to learn about your body, every inch of your body, and to find out exactly what it is you like and what it is works for you, then yes, one person can satisfy you. As human beings, the majority of us are prone to want some form of variety. We follow intellectual constructs that tell us that we can't have this only one partner. I've been very fortunate in the fact that I have met some women who make me want to be monogamous, which is, in my lifestyle, quite a rarity.
But we have to take that statement in context. You just said women, and that were desirable. You don't have any one of those
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Well, you just talked about the ideal woman that's out there, but you also...
There is no ideal woman out there. That's an illusion. That's,
for you.
There's only the ideal woman for you, but in order to get to that woman, you have to know first who you are and what it is you want. Not in terms of... And this is another element that's going to be brought up in my seminars and in my books. It's not about how a woman makes you feel. It's about how she treats you. For a man, the most important thing must be how she treats you. If you're really looking for the one woman you want to spend the rest of your life with, you have to start thinking about your own lifestyle and finding a woman that will fit in and help you support that lifestyle. For a woman, it's just the opposite.
But how has your writing, how have your books furthered your goal?
Okay, well, let me put this to you in an absolute context in terms of my journey and how I've changed. When I was a loser, I was suicidal. I'm not suicidal anymore. I don't have those thoughts anymore. I like who I am. I like my life. I feel good every day, and I'm glad that I'm me. I don't ever wish that I was someone else. When I was a loser, I used to say, gosh, I wish I had somebody else's life. I wish I was that guy. I wish I was that other person. Not anymore. I've reached a point where, and don't get me wrong, my life's not perfect. I got bills to pay like everybody else. I got health issues like everybody else. I still got to get up in the morning when I don't want to. But you know what? I would rather be me than anybody else on this planet,
Amen.
bar none.
Are you in a relationship right now?
Yes, I am.
And how did you get there? You probably have all 10 of those points down pretty well, probably to the point of being unconsciously competent.
I'm about 50% unconsciously competent. I've actually measured that. My goal is to...
That's good.
In my next
I'm halfway from being able to do it in my sleep.
Yeah, pretty much. In my upcoming book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, I actually talk about the different stages of development, starting from the beginning where you have the dead man, the loser who gives into suicide. The next step up is the loser. The next step up is the average guy. The next step up is 3 different levels of being a seducer in training. The level of redemption would come next. Then comes being the seducer, the master seducer, and the natural. I would be considered right now, according to my own book, a low-level master seducer.
You low-level master seducer,
I'm a low-level master seducer. And part of the reason for that is because I've taken this past year to write these books. When a man gets overwhelmed with the analysis of what he's doing well, it'll actually hurt his quote-unquote game.
Well, certainly you're dwelling in the learning process right now.
Well, I've passed the learning process. What I'm doing now is
you're
that
teaching it.
I'm teaching it.
So you're actually reconfirming your knowledge as you give it to others.
That's right, and that has put a real crimp in my game, especially over the last year. How do I say this without offending anyone?
I offend everybody daily.
Yeah, you can offend.
Well, I'm a bit more conscious than that. Let me put it to you this way. I would have been a lot more active and probably less aware of what works for me if I didn't sit down and actually write my books. People who are reading my books now, they've sent me reviews of the books. You'll actually find them up on my website. My ex-fiancé, who factors in greatly in the story of Loser to Seducer, also read the book, and she wrote me a very glowing review that you can read on my website.
Glowing so you're not talking about a bag of something on fire at your doorstep?
No, not at all. I'm talking about, just to give you a little view here, from Loser to Seducer, when I lost my ex-fiancé, I was hooked on her for about 7 years. And with the material that I learned, that I put in my book, I got her back. And after I had totally changed who I was, and I got her back, and we were together again, it lasted about a month, until I realized, I said, you know what, I went through this whole process. I finally redeemed myself and forgiven myself for the past, only to find out this relationship still won't work. So that was part of the process, and we ended our romantic connection. We're still in contact once in a while. She read the parts of the book initially that involved her. She had read those, gave her okay, because she's the only girl in that book that could be identifiable. And recently she wrote me a really nice review, and the things that she said in the review was the thing that she hated most when we were together is how clingy and needy I was, and how I've come so far and changed so much that I'm closer now to the person that she originally fell in love with, those 10, 15 years ago.
I really like the... Sorry, Brad, I'll let you get in here for a sec. But I really like the way you place your words. It's very...
Can you give us a sample there, Irma?
Please note that I do swear in the book, and there's no swearing.
I love it.
She likes the swearing.
Yeah. One of the things, when I wrote this book, a lot of it was originally my journal. And I decided to write the book the way I speak.
Right.
I'm not trying to give some sort of a higher quality literature experience. My books are not good literature. They're spoken by a guy who, for all intents and purposes, is still a dork. Okay. But who's made a lot of changes and who's been able to build his life.
Okay, I'm just going to read one little thing here. Free to be sexual being and natural woman. A seducer must see women as human beings looking to explore and be explored. A seducer has no animosity towards women and accepts that women are human beings that have all the potential good and realistic faults that humans possess. Women are not two-dimensional fictional character types such as the perfect lady wife and the dirty bedroom whore. The same woman is capable of a wide variety of emotions and actions as any other human beings, male and female. Yes, they are all sluts. Well, only if you're lucky. Then you get to be a man whore too. Happy, happy, joy, joy. I love that.
Now, what is it about that you like?
I like that I don't want a man to be afraid of my sexuality and what I want, and of my putting a list on the table of how to satisfy me, because I do believe in a monogamous relationship. Sex is always better when you're in a relationship, I find. But I also don't want the same stuff. I don't want what you learned 10 years ago at a dorm. You know what I mean? I want that you're going to satisfy my needs and that you're okay with my being a sexual being. I know people who are in hapless marriages that just are not sexually on the same plane, and it's never going to work. If you are sexually not compatible, forget the marriage.
I agree.
Isn't that a horrible thing to say? Or
I agree 100% with everything you've said. One of the things I teach in my seminar is the first 10 times you have sex. As a man, it's your job to be responsible for the sex. It's your job to be responsible for the birth control, your job to be responsible for the sex. I go on to say in my book, this is why abortion really is a woman's issue. If she's gotten pregnant, it's because the man didn't do his job. He's responsible for the birth control.
Wow, how do they react to that?
Not very positively.
Right.
It's true, though. It's certainly a responsibility.
Yeah. When I was lucky, I had an older brother, and he took me aside one day and he said, "Listen, birth control is always your responsibility, not the woman's. If she gets pregnant, it's your fault." And that did help shape some of the ways that I see the world. To go a step further, because it's a man's job to be responsible for the sex, it's his responsibility to make sure she enjoys it more than he does. Mm-hmm. So the first 10 times you have sex, you have to do something each time. The first time you have sex, you might want to try something. You might just want to try. Just have normal sex. Learn about each other's bodies. Mm-hmm. The next time you have sex, try something different. It could be a 6-hour game of foreplay. The next time you have sex, it could be a quickie. The next time you have sex, it could be something like experimenting with some BDSM, tying your partner up, or doing some skin sensation play. The next time you have sex could involve foods or syrup. The next time you have sex, you could do something in public. Showering together is another thing. Shaving your body hair together is another thing. The idea is that the first 10 times you have sex with anybody, each time has to be such a unique and different experience than the last.
And they should be something that's acceptable and actually sensuous to both parties.
Exactly. There has to be some level of consent. And when someone is not really into something, you should not be pushing that boundary. There's just too many women out there, too many opportunities. You don't need to press on someone's boundary if it's not working out.
Well, for example, you talked about the threesome. That certainly should be something that is an invitation by a woman as a conversation.
Absolutely not. If you're doing that, then that's a demonstration that you're not able to handle the sexuality. You need to be able to demonstrate that
you're saying that at the beginning of a relationship you should say you're interested in a threesome?
When the sexual topic comes up in any discussion as you're getting into a new relationship, it's so important to be honest. And you would be amazed that even if a woman is not into the whole threesome thing, she will respect you for being honest, saying that down the road, I want threesomes, I want this type of lifestyle. There's nothing worse than not bringing it up and still wanting it, because that's a sign for a woman. A woman doesn't take that as, oh, he was trying to scare me.
Because then a man will become passive-aggressive and start mentioning it in little things here and there, and the woman's going to say, are you trying to tell me you want a threesome? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Well, doesn't the concept even suggest that there's not enough in the woman that he's with?
Not at all.
No.
See, one thing, like, and I want to be fair here. Okay?
Check me out. Eh?
I want to be very fair here. Okay, I hear exactly what you're saying, Mark, and I used to think exactly like you.
Well, identify what it is that I'm saying.
The idea that you don't want to offend her by bringing up the idea of a threesome.
Well,
the idea that you're worried that by being honest about the things that you desire might end up hurting her or make her feel bad or give her low self-esteem. I used to think exactly that.
Well, I don't know that I would even desire that because it's twice as much work, and it's also managing two relationships, because I would think that it's not just sex to me. I have one intimate partner, and I share that with her that she wants to explore. I'm monogamous, I guess, in that respect. So the whole idea of inviting a third person in, to me, threatens the integrity of the relationship. That I have made a commitment to that woman, unless she's said that she is curious in that respect or even wants to introduce another person into the relationship. I would think that that would be an infringement on her, what you had used before, her
boundaries.
Her boundaries, but also her security.
Well, fear of abandonment.
Yes, the fear of abandonment.
I think obviously this book isn't for everybody, and I think the I don't know. I can't. I'm say, but there are men.
But what about that, Frank?
Mm-hmm. All right, let's look at that. If you do bring up the idea that you want to have sex with in a threesome or other women on the side or be in an open relationship, yes, the fear of abandonment is an emotional need you will have to continually address.
Especially if there's no woman, no specific woman like her best friend. If it's just the idea, I've had a fantasy of having twins, I've had a fantasy of threesome, that really, I think, could be best kept as a fantasy to the woman that you're trying to have a real relationship with.
Real relationship. Okay.
An open, intimate, honest relationship.
I think
not
would
just
be
sex.
Depressing.
Not just sex. It's because I also think that foreplay is part of the sex and the discussion. The intimacy is also in the things that you share with that person that you don't talk to with anyone else. The way you make each other laugh might turn each other on. You talked about the spontaneous, a little bit in the kitchen while the children are watching television might be kind of a fun way to keep a relationship alive after you're married and have children. I don't know if you're just talking about sex or single people getting together for that relationship, or if you're talking about all relationships, including ones that are 20 years old and have children and might get stagnant.
I'm talking about all relationships. To bring up the example you used before, if you're going to wait for her to initiate even the discussion of living out fantasies, you're putting the responsibility of the sex in the relationship on the woman. And there's a difference between bringing up the topic of discussion and looking to explore that and telling a woman what to do in terms of being a brute and overpowering her. I would suggest that you're always working to manage a relationship. When you were saying, well, that's two relationships and I have to manage two, you're always managing a relationship, regardless of the relationship you're in, whether it's in a sexual committed relationship, a strictly casual sexual relationship, a one-night stand, or even a friendship with no sex. You're always managing relationships.
But you talked about the guy who he was married and could have had a threesome with his wife's best friend. And had he learn to accept his wife's best friend as a person and love her like he loved his wife who loved that person, and came to a place of comfort where they could have shared intimacy because he wasn't hung up on the issue in itself, then his life would have certainly been enriched. Their relationship would have been enriched. Their friendship, and yet there's a but that you risk everything when you cross that line if you don't do it with respect.
Your relationship is always at risk. It's not just, well, if we do the threesome thing, our relationship is at risk then. If you don't live out your fantasies and if you don't create an environment where you're actually able to discuss your fantasies with your partner, that's also putting your relationship at risk. I don't see a difference between the two. Just to finish up this thought, I can totally understand where you're coming from, but I'm on the other end of the spectrum, where I know what it is I want long term, and I will seek out to find a woman who can give me that long term, and I will be very honest about it right from the get-go. And women respect honesty, and in my book I define honesty for women, and that is this. If you're honest enough such that you're willing to tell her things that might even make her angry or upset her, That's when she knows you're truly being honest. And when you're withholding and when you're not bringing up certain topics because you're worried that it's going to make her feel bad.
You're in front of the internet watching porn at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's what it is.
That's where it ends up. And that doesn't address her fear of abandonment any better. Be honest, and when she gets upset, know that it's a good thing. Remember, she needs the emotional range anyway. It's a perfect setup.
She might just bring you a blow-up doll.
Weren't you going to bring one in here to the studio?
Do you
Irma?
want one? I can bring one.
Well, you kept... I don't really want one, but
She's
you did say you were going to bring one in regardless.
She's a little hairy blow-up doll. That's okay.
Hairy armpits.
Listen, we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be back with Frank B Kermit, author of From Loser to Seducer and Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, does your man squash your inner vixen? When you ask him to repeat what you have just said to him, does he look at you like a deer caught in the headlights? Does he think that leaving the game on while you talk to him is a good idea? Is his favorite phrase, "Yes, dear, you are absolutely right"? Does wife or girlfriend mean boring and dull to him? Ladies, don't you wish that he knows what you mean when you ask him if you look fat? Then you need to buy him the book, Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. On sale now at franktalks.com.
From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B Kermit. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at franktalks.com.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, The Philosophy of a Seducer. Ladies, have you ever wondered where all the real men have gone? Do you turn to your women friends because you cannot find a true man in your life? Do you want the man in your life to step up and know what it means to be a man that can make you feel like the woman that you are? Are you tired of mothering the men you date? Give these boys the gift of manhood. The book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, teaches men to create their own seduction persona, personal inner game, and how to take the lead in a relationship. Buy this book now at franktalks.com.
Here we're back. See, you can tell we're in mid-conversation, and we're back here with Frank B Kermit.
I am relaunching the Frank Talks radio show, which is called Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles.
Okay.
For the type of people that I would be interviewing on my show, sex workers, people who practice BDSM, swingers, and seducers, seduction instructors.
So Frank Talks will be frankly speaking on some of the fringe.
Absolutely. We're looking at timely taboo topics. I'm taking an honest, frank approach, and it'll be done with very respected and professional conduct. That's one of the things I guarantee to all my guests who I've interviewed in the past. I am not here to put them on the spot. I'm here to ask them some very honest and very direct questions, but in a respectful manner. I start off my every show with the same question: where were you born? And tell me about your upbringing. If there's ever something they don't want to talk about, they simply say no comment. I like to present people first and foremost as human beings. So even if we're talking to, let's say, a professional sex worker, a professional escort, if I can present that person who may be on the receiving end of a lot of prejudice and hatred, I present her as a human being first, then anybody who's listening might be thinking, hey, you know what? She's just like me. I could have been that person.
And that's it, is that, Mary that's sitting in the cubicle beside you, when she goes home and closes that door, you have no idea what Mary's up to. Everybody's got something in their closet, and it's about not judging people. I think you give them a forum to be open and honest, talk about their sexuality, and, it's a big city, we're grown-ups, why not? Go for it.
Another thing is that you'd be amazed how many women out there have worked in the sex industry that you would never know about, just to do things like put them through school. She's a university or college student. She's young. She's fairly attractive. She can't afford to pay off the student loans, and the debts are piling up, and the rent is due. Well, a couple of sessions a week, and she doesn't have that problem anymore. And there's no way that a lot of these women are going to be honest with their male partners, because a lot of their male partners can't handle it.
So you want to destigmatize
I just want to be able to say that, look, if you want the information, here it is, and I'm asking the questions that everybody really wants to know. I'm asking the really tough questions and getting an honest answer. Why? Because they provide an environment where people can talk about that. One of the things I teach men is that you must learn to become a man who can handle truth. Because as long as you demonstrate you can handle a woman's truth, she'll be honest with you. And if you demonstrate you can't handle it, she will not tell you things. She'll even act like she's completely the opposite of what you think.
There must be a way of learning how to communicate that truth between men and women. So because
the only way, and this is what I teach men, learn to handle truth. If you're going to get angry or you're going to act like a little boy and you're going to pull a tantrum every time someone tells you something that you don't like to hear, that's an act of demonstrating you cannot handle truth. If, however, when a woman tells you something, you don't react negatively, or maybe you're even positive with her, and let's say she tells you something that you don't like, but you don't want to make her afraid of being honest with you. Tell her something like this. You know what? I'm not really sure that I agree with what you said, or I'm not really sure I'm comfortable with what you said, but I appreciate the fact you've just been honest with me. You would be amazed at how that opens the floodgates and all the truth comes out.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, does your man squash your inner vixen? When you ask him to repeat what you have just said to him, does he look at you like a deer caught in the headlights? Does he think that leaving the game on while you talk to him is a good idea? Is his favorite phrase, "Yes, dear, you are absolutely right"? Does wife or girlfriend mean boring and dull to him? Ladies, don't you wish that he knows what you mean when you ask him if you look fat? Then you need to buy him the book, Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. On sale now at franktalks.com.